Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the stars blur past the viewport. His crew had been traveling for 3 weeks since leaving Earth's solar system. This was humanity's first real journey into deep space using the new faster-than-light engines. Jake felt proud to lead this historic mission. The year was 2287 and humans were finally reaching out to touch the galaxy. Lieutenant Danny Cole sat at the navigation station and suddenly called out that sensors were picking up something unusual. There were dozens of ships ahead, all different sizes and configurations. Jake ordered the crew to slow down and approach carefully. Whatever these ships were, they represented the first contact between humans and alien life. The alien fleet surrounded the horizon's edge within minutes. A communication signal came through and Jake accepted it. The view screen showed a tall reptilian creature with golden scales and cold yellow eyes. The alien introduced himself as High Arbiter Zeln of the Galactic Council. His voice carried absolute authority and no warmth. Zeln explained that humans had entered Council space without permission. The Galactic Council governed this entire sector of the galaxy and had done so for over 10,000 years. 47 different alien species belonged to the Council and followed its laws. Now humanity would join them whether they wanted to or not. Jake listened carefully as Zeln laid out the terms. Earth must submit to Council authority immediately. Humans would provide 20% of all their resources every year forever. The Council would place monitoring stations throughout human territory to ensure compliance. Humanity had 30 days to accept these terms. If they refused, the Council would use corrective measures to force compliance. Commander Morrison felt anger rising in his chest, but kept his face calm. He asked what would happen if Earth rejected the ultimatum. Zeln smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Council had weapons that could crack planets like eggs. They had armies that had crushed hundreds of rebellions. Resistance was pointless. Humans should feel honored to join the civilized galaxy under Council guidance. Jake asked for time to deliver the message to Earth's government. Zeln agreed and gave the Horizon's Edge safe passage back to human space. As soon as the alien ships departed, Jake ordered maximum speed toward home. His hands shook slightly as he recorded his report for Earth's leaders. Humanity's first contact with alien life had turned into an immediate threat to their freedom. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake and his crew analyzed everything their sensors had recorded about the Council ships. The aliens had powerful energy shields and plasma weapons, far beyond anything humans had built. Their ships were faster, and their technology more advanced in almost every way. A direct military confrontation would be suicide. Lieutenant Danny Cole spent hours reviewing the sensor data and noticed something strange. The Council ships had excellent defenses against energy weapons, but their computer systems seemed oddly simple. There were no complex security protocols, no redundant networks, nothing that suggested they worried about cyber attacks. Danny mentioned this observation to Jake, who filed it away as potentially important. When the Horizon's Edge reached Earth, Jake immediately traveled to Geneva, where President Helen Carter had called an emergency meeting. The large conference room filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. Jake delivered his report and played the recording of High Arbiter Zeln's ultimatum. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. General Paul Bennett was the first to speak. He commanded Earth's unified military forces and had fought in 3 wars during his career. The general stated flatly that surrendering meant the end of human independence. 20% of Earth's resources every year would cripple the economy. Council monitoring stations would turn humanity into a subject species with no real freedom. But fighting seemed impossible against such overwhelming power. Admiral Lisa Grant ran Earth's Space Defense Network. She had reviewed the Horizon's Edge sensor logs and agreed that Earth's warships could not match Council technology in direct combat. The aliens had thousands of years head start in weapons development. Any conventional war would be over in days with Earth's complete defeat. President Carter asked if there were any options besides surrender or suicide. The room remained quiet until Dr. Kevin Hayes stood up. He directed the Strategic Defense Initiative, a secretive research program that studied potential threats to Earth. His team had been analyzing the Council ship data for the past 6 hours and found something interesting. Dr. Hayes explained that the Council seemed to have massive blind spots in their military thinking. They had never developed nuclear weapons despite having the technology to do so. There was no evidence of biological warfare capability. Their cybersecurity was surprisingly weak. Most striking, they seemed to fight wars only one way, with direct ship-to-ship combat using energy weapons. The Council had been so dominant for so long that they had stopped thinking creatively about warfare. Humans, on the other hand, had spent thousands of years fighting each other with increasingly terrible weapons. Earth's history was soaked in blood from countless wars. Humanity understood biological warfare, nuclear weapons, cyber attacks, guerrilla tactics, terrorism, sabotage, and every other ugly method of killing. These were things the peaceful Council species had never needed to learn. President Carter sat forward in her chair. She asked Dr. Hayes if he was suggesting that Earth could actually win a war against the Council. The scientist hesitated before answering. Win might be too strong a word, he said, but humanity could certainly make the Council regret attacking them. Humans could fight dirty in ways the aliens had never imagined. The question was whether Earth's leaders had the stomach for that kind of warfare. The president looked around the room at the assembled leaders. She knew the decision ultimately fell to her. Surrender meant safety, but also permanent subjugation. Resistance meant war and potentially the destruction of human civilization. But it also meant maintaining human dignity and freedom. She thought about her children and grandchildren growing up as second-class citizens in their own solar system. Helen Carter made her choice. She ordered General Bennett to implement Operation Thunderstrike, a classified military protocol designed for exactly this scenario. Earth would not surrender. If the Galactic Council wanted to force humanity into chains, they would discover that humans bite back when cornered. The meeting adjourned and military leaders rushed to their posts to begin preparations. Over the next 30 days, Earth became an armed fortress. Factories that had built civilian spacecraft converted to military production. Scientists worked around the clock developing weapons the Council had never encountered. Commander Jake Morrison trained Special Forces teams for missions that conventional military thinking said were impossible. Lieutenant Danny Cole joined a cyber warfare unit preparing attacks on alien computer systems. Admiral Lisa Grant coordinated the construction of thousands of kinetic impactors, simple tungsten rods that could be accelerated to devastating speeds. Dr. Kevin Hayes supervised the retrofitting of old nuclear missiles that had been mothballed decades ago. Every human on Earth knew that war was coming. They prepared to face an enemy that viewed them as primitive animals to be dominated. The 30 days passed quickly. On the final day, long-range sensors detected a massive Council fleet entering the solar system. 200 warships commanded by Fleet Admiral Cross approached Earth in battle formation. The alien commander sent a message demanding immediate surrender. He expected the humans to collapse in fear when they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Instead, Admiral Grant sent a calm response from Guardian Station, Earth's primary defense platform. She informed Fleet Admiral Cross that humanity rejected the Council's terms. Earth would remain free or die trying. Cross laughed at what he considered human foolishness. He had crushed 17 rebellions during his long career. These primitive humans would be no different. He ordered his fleet to move into position and prepare to disable Earth's orbital defenses as a lesson in obedience. But the humans had spent 30 days preparing a very nasty surprise. Fleet Admiral Cross sat in his command chair and watched Earth grow larger on the main view screen. The primitive blue planet looked peaceful and defenseless. His fleet of 200 warships represented enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. These humans would surrender within the hour once they understood their situation. Cross had seen it happen countless times before with other upstart species. Captain Ryan Foster drifted silently through space aboard the Shadow Runner, his stealth frigate invisible to the Council sensors. His ship had been designed specifically for covert operations with radar-absorbent coating and minimal heat signature. For the past week, Ryan and his crew had been working carefully around every Council vessel in the fleet. Small automated drones had attached packages to the hulls of alien ships while their crews remained completely unaware. The packages were not explosives or weapons in any traditional sense. Programmer Amy Chen had spent 25 straight days designing the most sophisticated cyber warfare payload ever created. Each package contained advanced hacking tools programmed to infiltrate Council ship systems the moment they received an activation signal. Amy had studied the sensor readings from the Horizon's Edge encounter and identified dozens of vulnerabilities in alien computer architecture. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the command deck of Guardian Station and monitored the tactical situation. The Council fleet had moved into position around Earth exactly as predicted. Fleet Admiral Cross was following standard Council doctrine, arranging his ships in a formation designed to project overwhelming force. The alien commander had no idea he was already surrounded by human stealth vessels, and his entire fleet was compromised. Lisa gave the signal and Captain Ryan Foster pressed the activation button. For 3 seconds, nothing visible happened. Then chaos erupted across the Council fleet. Navigation systems failed on 60 ships simultaneously. Several vessels collided with each other as their autopilot suddenly shut down. Energy shields flickered and died on dozens more ships. Weapon systems began firing randomly in all directions, forcing nearby Council vessels to break formation to avoid friendly fire. Communication networks crashed completely, leaving fleet commanders unable to coordinate with their subordinates. Fleet Admiral Cross stared in disbelief as his perfectly organized armada dissolved into confusion. Warning sirens blared throughout his flagship. His tactical officer reported that the ship's main computer had been compromised by an unknown intrusion. Engineering teams were trying to regain control, but the hostile software was incredibly sophisticated. It adapted and evolved every time they tried to shut it down. The alien commander attempted to send new orders to his fleet, but discovered his communication systems were completely offline. He could see other Council ships spinning out of control or drifting helplessly. Some vessels were firing their weapons at empty space while others had lost all power. In less than 5 minutes, the mighty Council fleet had been reduced to a collection of crippled ships unable to fight or even maintain formation. General Paul Bennett watched the chaos from Earth's military command center and allowed himself a tight smile. The cyber attack had worked even better than expected. Now came the killing blow. He gave the order and thousands of kinetic impactors launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. The tungsten rods were simple weapons with no complex technology. Each one measured 3 meters long and massed several tons. Magnetic accelerators boosted them to speeds approaching a significant fraction of light velocity. No guidance systems, no warheads, just solid metal moving incredibly fast. The Council shields that easily deflected energy weapons proved nearly useless against solid projectiles carrying such enormous kinetic energy. The first wave of impactors struck 17 Council ships within seconds. The tungsten rods punched through shields and hulls like bullets through paper. Massive explosions bloomed in space as alien warships broke apart. A second wave followed 30 seconds later, targeting ships that had managed to restore partial shield function. The results were identical. More Council vessels torn to pieces by simple kinetic weapons. Fleet Admiral Cross felt his flagship shudder as 3 impactors struck the stern section. Emergency force fields sealed off the damaged areas, but life support began failing throughout the ship. His tactical display showed that 37 Council vessels had been destroyed, and over 100 more were severely damaged. The human attack continued relentlessly, with new waves of kinetic weapons arriving every few minutes. The alien commander finally understood the terrible mistake the Council had made. These humans fought nothing like civilized species. They used cyber warfare and kinetic weapons and tactics that no Council race had employed in thousands of years. The humans were not trying to defeat the Council fleet in honorable combat. They were simply destroying it using whatever methods worked. Captain Ryan Foster maneuvered the Shadow Runner close to a disabled Council battleship and fired a full salvo of missiles. The alien vessel, already crippled by the cyber attack, had no defense against the incoming weapons. It exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness of space. Ryan felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. His younger brother had asked him before the battle why humans had to fight so dirty. Ryan had answered that survival mattered more than fighting fair. Admiral Lisa Grant coordinated the human forces with cold efficiency. More stealth ships emerged from hiding to launch attacks on confused Council vessels. Kinetic impactors continued hammering any alien ship that tried to restore its systems. Nuclear-tipped missiles, weapons the Council considered barbaric and primitive, destroyed 3 enemy carriers that had managed to launch fighter craft. Within 2 hours, Fleet Admiral Cross's mighty armada of 200 ships had been reduced to scattered wreckage and fleeing survivors. The alien commander sat in his darkened bridge as life support finally failed completely. He managed to record one final message and transmit it toward Council space on emergency frequencies. The message was simple but carried devastating. Implications: the humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Lieutenant Danny Cole monitored communications from the Cyber Warfare Center and intercepted Cross's final transmission. He reported it to Admiral Grant, who nodded grimly. The message would reach the Galactic Council in a few days. Then the real war would begin. This first battle was just a warning shot to show the aliens that humanity would not submit quietly. President Helen Carter watched the battle from a secure bunker deep beneath Geneva. When Admiral Grant reported victory, Helen felt no joy, only sadness at the lives lost and the certainty that worse fighting lay ahead. She had chosen war over surrender, and humanity had won the opening engagement. But the Galactic Council commanded thousands of ships across hundreds of worlds. Earth had bloodied their nose. Now the aliens would come back with overwhelming force. Dr. Kevin Hayes joined the president in the bunker and reviewed the battle data. His predictions had proven correct. The Council's reliance on advanced energy weapons and shields made them vulnerable to simpler kinetic attacks. Their poor cybersecurity had allowed Amy Chen's hacking programs to paralyze the fleet. But these advantages would only work once. The Council would adapt and return with countermeasures against human tactics. The scientist explained that Earth needed to move beyond defensive fighting. Humanity could not win a war of attrition against an enemy with vastly superior resources. The only path to survival was making the war so costly that the Council decided humans were not worth conquering. That meant taking the fight to the enemy and hitting them where they felt safe. General Paul Bennett agreed with Dr. Hayes' assessment. Earth had to go on the offensive immediately before the Council could organize a proper response. He proposed sending strike teams deep into alien territory to attack infrastructure and supply lines. Traditional warfare focused on destroying enemy military forces. Human warfare, refined through centuries of bitter experience, understood that breaking the enemy's will to fight mattered more than destroying their armies. Over the next week, Earth's military prepared for a new phase of the war. Special forces teams trained for suicide missions behind enemy lines. Engineers modified captured Council ships to serve as Trojan horses. Scientists worked frantically to develop countermeasures against alien technology they still barely understood. Commander Jake Morrison volunteered to lead deep reconnaissance missions into Council space. His experience with First Contact made him uniquely qualified to understand alien psychology. Jake selected a crew of specialists, including Lieutenant Danny Cole, whose technical skills would be essential for sabotage operations. They would take the Horizon's Edge, now heavily modified with stealth technology and weapons, into the heart of enemy territory. Captain Ryan Foster received orders to form a special operations squadron of stealth ships. His mission was to hunt Council supply convoys and destroy logistics infrastructure. The aliens were used to fighting honorable battles between warships. They had never dealt with an enemy that targeted their supply chains and communication networks. Amy Chen joined a team of cyber specialists assigned to identify and attack Council information systems. The young programmer had become a hero on Earth after her cyber warfare programs crippled. War leader Thorn stood before the assembled Galactic Council and accepted his commission to destroy humanity. The massive Korath warrior had crushed 23 rebellions during his long military career. His reputation for ruthless efficiency made even other Council members uncomfortable. But the humiliation of losing an entire fleet to primitive humans demanded an overwhelming response. Thorn promised the Council that Earth would burn within 3 months. The war leader's armada of 1,000 ships represented the largest military force assembled in 5 centuries. Vessels from a dozen different Council species joined the fleet, each bringing their own weapons and tactics. Thorn organized them into battle groups designed to overwhelm any defense Earth could mount. The humans had won their first engagement through surprise and treachery. That would not happen again. High Arbiter Zeln watched the fleet depart and felt satisfaction mixed with unease. The Korath commander would certainly defeat Earth's forces, but the cost of that victory might be higher than anyone anticipated. The Council had maintained peace through overwhelming power for thousands of years. Now a single upstart species had shattered that image of invincibility. Other subject races were watching to see if rebellion could succeed. Ambassador Vree of the Nethian Collective approached Zeln after the War Council adjourned. The cautious diplomat expressed concern that escalating the conflict might inspire more resistance across the galaxy. Perhaps humanity could be negotiated with rather than destroyed. Zeln dismissed these worries with cold contempt. The Council could not show weakness. Every species in the galaxy needed to understand that defying Council authority led only to annihilation. On Earth, General Paul Bennett reviewed intelligence reports about the incoming Council armada. 1,000 ships would arrive in approximately 6 weeks. Earth's defenses could not stop a force that size. Direct military confrontation meant certain defeat. Therefore, humanity would not fight directly. Instead, they would attack the enemy's ability to coordinate and sustain such a large force. Dr. Kevin Hayes had spent the past month studying captured Council technology and identified a critical vulnerability. The Council's faster-than-light communication network relied on relay stations positioned throughout the galaxy. These stations allowed instant communication across vast distances but were lightly defended. The Council had never considered that an enemy might attack infrastructure rather than military targets. The scientist proposed a bold strategy. Strike teams would destroy key relay stations and cripple the Council's ability to coordinate their forces. Without reliable communication, War Leader Thorn's fleet would be reduced to isolated battle groups unable to work together effectively. Meanwhile, human forces would employ hit-and-run tactics against vulnerable targets and supply lines. Earth could not win through strength, but they could make victory impossibly expensive for the aliens. President Helen Carter approved the plan despite knowing it meant sending people on suicide missions. Many of the strike teams would not return from their assignments deep in enemy territory. But the alternative was watching Earth be conquered without a fight. She personally met with each mission commander before they departed, thanking them for their sacrifice and promising their names would never be forgotten. Commander Jake Morrison led the first strike team, aboard the modified Horizon's Edge. His target was a major relay station in the Andromeda sector that handled communications for hundreds of Council worlds. Lieutenant Danny Cole had mapped the station's defenses and identified weak points in their security systems. The mission required infiltrating deep into Council space, destroying the station, and escaping before reinforcements arrived. The Horizon's Edge traveled for 3 weeks using captured Council navigation data. They avoided detection by staying off main travel routes and using the ship's enhanced stealth systems. Jake felt the weight of responsibility for his crew's lives. Most of them were young volunteers barely out of training. They understood this mission would likely be one way, but had volunteered anyway to protect Earth. Lieutenant Sophie Blake commanded a second strike team targeting relay stations in the Perseus Arm. Her ship, the Night Wind, carried nuclear weapons and electromagnetic pulse bombs designed to completely destroy alien communication facilities. Sophie had lost her entire family when a Council scout ship fired on a civilian transport during the initial contact. She fought not for glory but for revenge against the species that had taken everything from her. Captain Ryan Foster's stealth squadron ranged across Council territory hunting supply convoys. The aliens moved massive amounts of material to support War Leader Thorn's fleet. Food, fuel, ammunition, and spare parts traveled along predictable routes from core Council worlds to the staging area. Ryan's ships struck these convoys repeatedly, destroying freighters and scattering escorts. The Council had never dealt with this type of asymmetric warfare. Their military doctrine focused on fleet battles between honorable opponents. The idea of attacking civilian shipping and infrastructure seemed barbaric and cowardly to alien commanders. But human history had taught different lessons. Wars were not won through honor, but through destroying the enemy's ability to continue fighting. Commander Morrison's team reached the Andromeda relay station after 21 days of travel. The massive facility orbited a neutron star and bristled with communication arrays. Defensive satellites patrolled the nearby space, but their sensors were designed to detect large warships, not a small stealth vessel. The Horizon's Edge drifted slowly toward the station, using only maneuvering thrusters. Lieutenant Danny Cole launched a cyber attack to disable the station's alarm systems. His programs infiltrated the facility's computers and created false sensor readings showing everything operating normally. Meanwhile, Jake led a boarding party onto the station through a maintenance airlock. They moved quickly through the corridors, planting nuclear charges at critical junctions while trying to avoid contact with the alien crew. The mission went smoothly until a Korath security officer discovered one of the charges. He raised the alarm before Jake could stop him, Suddenly, the facility was on full alert with armed guards converging on the human positions. Jake ordered his team to detonate the charges immediately rather than risk capture. The nuclear weapons exploded in a cascade of destruction that tore the relay station apart. The horizon's edge barely escaped the expanding debris field. 3 crew members had been trapped on the station when the charges detonated. Jake added their names to the growing list of casualties from this war. But the mission had succeeded. A critical node in the Council's communication network was gone, disrupting coordination across an entire sector. Lieutenant Sophie Blake's team destroyed 2 more relay stations over the following week. Each successful attack degraded the Council's ability to communicate across vast distances. War Leader Thorn found himself unable to maintain reliable contact with his dispersed fleet elements. Orders took hours or days to reach their destinations instead of arriving instantly. The mighty armada began suffering from confusion and poor coordination. Captain Ryan Foster ambushed a major supply convoy near the border between Council and neutral space. His squadron destroyed 15 freighters carrying fuel cells and spare parts for War Leader Thorn's ships. The convoy's military escorts proved no match for human stealth vessels attacking from unexpected angles. Ryan watched the alien ships burn and felt no pity. The Council had threatened to destroy Earth. Now they would learn what total war actually meant. Amy Chen coordinated cyber attacks from Earth against Council information systems. Her programs infiltrated alien computer networks and spread false information, corrupted data files, and disrupted logistics systems. Council supply officers found their inventory records changing randomly. Navigation data became unreliable. Financial systems crashed repeatedly. The attacks created chaos across hundreds of worlds. War Leader Thorn raged at his subordinates as reports of disasters poured in. Relay stations destroyed, convoys ambushed, computer systems compromised. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking at will and vanishing before his forces could respond. His mighty fleet could crush Earth's defenses easily, but first it had to reach the target. That was proving far more difficult than anyone had anticipated. The Korath commander tried to implement countermeasures but found himself constantly reacting to human initiatives. He stationed additional guards at relay stations, only to have the humans switch to attacking supply depots. He reinforced convoy escorts and the humans began targeting repair facilities. Every time Thorn moved to counter one threat, the humans shifted focus to a different vulnerability. General Paul Bennett watched the strategic situation develop with cautious satisfaction. Earth's guerrilla warfare strategy was working better than hoped. The Council fleet remained powerful, but its effectiveness had been significantly degraded. War Leader Thorn's armada was supposed to reach Earth in 6 weeks, but supply problems and communication failures had already delayed the timeline by 2 weeks. Every day of delay gave Earth more time to prepare defenses. However, the strategy had its costs. Of the 12 strike teams sent into Council territory, 4 had been destroyed and 2 more were missing. Captain Ryan Foster's squadron had lost 3 ships to WoW. Admiral Lisa Grant stared at the holographic display showing New Haven's position and felt helpless rage. 50,000 civilians faced death in less than 7 days. Earth's fastest ships could not reach the colony in time. The orbital defenses around New Haven might delay a Council attack for a few hours at most. War Leader Thorn had chosen his target specifically because it was vulnerable and distant from Earth's main defenses. Dr. Kevin Hayes stood before the Emergency War Council and explained his desperate plan. The Council's central data repository on Korath Prime contained records of every decision, every military operation, every secret deal made over 10,000 years. That information represented the Council's real power. If humans could steal and broadcast that data across the galaxy, it might expose truths that would shatter the Council's authority. President Helen Carter understood what the scientist was proposing. A suicide mission deep into the most heavily defended system in Council space. The team would need to infiltrate the fortress world, break into the data repository, download massive amounts of information, and transmit it before being captured or killed. The odds of success were minimal, but doing nothing meant watching New Haven burn. Lieutenant Danny Cole volunteered to lead the mission before anyone could ask. His technical skills made him essential for penetrating the repository's security systems. Amy Chen immediately volunteered as well. Her cyber warfare expertise would be needed to crack alien encryption and broadcast the stolen data. Within an hour, a full team had assembled, all volunteers who understood they would probably not return. The team would travel aboard a captured Council frigate that had been modified to appear damaged. They would approach Korath Prime broadcasting false distress signals and claiming to be survivors from one of War Leader Thorn's fleet elements. Once close enough, they would launch a full assault on the data repository. Speed and surprise were their only advantages. Commander Jake Morrison wanted to lead the mission himself, but General Paul Bennett refused. Jake was too valuable as a tactical commander to risk on a single operation. Instead, the mission fell to Lieutenant Danny Cole and his hand-picked team. Jake pulled Danny aside before departure and told him simply to come back alive. Danny smiled and promised to try, though both men knew the odds. The captured frigate, renamed the Final Answer by its crew, departed from a hidden base near Mars. The journey to Korath Prime would take 12 days at maximum speed. Meanwhile, War Leader Thorn's fleet continued moving toward New Haven. The Council commander had assembled a strike force specifically to deploy the Scourge weapon. Nothing would stop him from carrying out his orders. Captain Ryan Foster received instructions to harry the Council fleet heading toward New Haven. His stealth squadron could not stop the aliens, but they could slow them down. Ryan's ship struck at the fleet's flanks, destroying escort vessels and forcing War Leader Thorn to divert resources to protect his formation. Every hour of delay increased the chance that Danny's mission might succeed. Ambassador Vree watched the war escalate beyond all reason and made a difficult decision. The Nethian diplomat had served the Council faithfully for 40 years. But using the Scourge weapon against civilians crossed a moral line that Vree could not accept. He sent a secret message to President Carter offering information about Council fleet movements and vulnerabilities. The message included a simple statement: not all Council species supported this genocide. The revelation that some aliens opposed the war surprised Earth's leaders. They had assumed all Council species were united against humanity. Ambassador Vree's defection suggested that cracks in the Council's unity ran deeper than suspected. President Carter authorized intelligence teams to contact other potentially sympathetic aliens. If humans could divide the Council, they might survive this war. Lieutenant Danny Cole and his team reached Korath Prime after 12 days of tense travel. The massive fortress world was home to 3 billion Korath and protected by defensive satellites, patrol fleets, and energy shields that could withstand planetary bombardment. The data repository sat beneath the surface in a facility designed to survive even a direct nuclear strike. Amy Chen initiated the deception by broadcasting false distress signals on Council frequencies. She claimed the Final Answer had been damaged fighting human raiders and needed immediate assistance. The signals included authentic Council identification codes stolen from previous engagements. Korath Prime's traffic control directed them to a military repair station. In orbit above the main continent, the damaged frigate approached the repair station, slowly while Danny and his team prepared for the assault. They wore captured Council uniforms and carried forged identification documents. The plan required getting onto the planet's surface and reaching the repository before station security realized the ship was hostile. Every step depended on timing and luck. Station personnel came aboard to assess the damage and were immediately captured by the human team. Danny hated using these aliens as hostages, but understood the mission's importance justified harsh measures. They forced the captive Korath to transmit clearance codes allowing a shuttle to launch toward the planet. Within minutes, the human team was descending through Korath Prime's atmosphere. War Leader Thorn's strike force arrived at New Haven exactly on schedule. The Council commander looked at the human colony through his view screen and felt no emotion. These creatures had forced the Council to use forbidden weapons through their stubborn resistance. Their deaths would serve as a lesson to the entire galaxy about the price of defying established authority. The Scourge weapon required 30 minutes to charge before firing. During that time, Captain Ryan Foster's squadron made a desperate attack on Thorn's flagship. The stealth ships emerged from the darkness and launched everything they had at the massive Council vessel. Missiles, kinetic impactors, and nuclear weapons struck the alien ship's shields in a coordinated barrage. War Leader Thorn barely noticed the attack. His flagship's shields absorbed the human weapons with ease. He ordered his escorts to destroy the annoying stealth ships and returned his attention to the Scourge weapon. The charging sequence proceeded normally. In 23 minutes, New Haven would cease to exist. The 50,000 humans below went about their lives unaware that death approached from above. On Korath Prime, Lieutenant Danny Cole and his team stormed the data repository using captured access codes. Surprise guards died before they could raise an alarm. The humans moved through the facility with ruthless efficiency, killing anyone who might interfere with their mission. Amy Chen reached the central computer core and began downloading files at maximum speed. The repository contained more information than anyone had imagined. 10,000 years of council history. All the secret decisions, all the manipulations, all the crimes committed to maintain power. Amy's programs worked frantically to copy everything, while simultaneously preparing to broadcast the data on all frequencies. The download would take 18 minutes. The broadcast would reach most of the galaxy within seconds of transmission. Alarms finally sounded throughout the facility, as Korath security realized they were under attack. Danny and his team established defensive positions around the computer core. They had 18 minutes to hold against an entire planet's worth of enemies. The first wave of Korath soldiers charged into the chamber and met withering fire from human weapons. Bodies piled up, but more aliens kept coming. War Leader Thorn watched the countdown reach 5 minutes and felt satisfaction. The humans had fought bravely for a primitive species, but courage meant nothing against overwhelming power. The Scourge weapon reached full charge. Thorn gave the order to fire. Energy gathered in the weapon system, preparing to release destruction that would scour all life from New Haven. Amy Chen's download reached 97% complete. Korath soldiers were breaking through the defensive positions. Danny had been wounded twice but continued fighting. 3 team members were dead, and the rest were running out of ammunition. The mission was seconds from failure when the download completed. Amy triggered the broadcast protocol and sent 10,000 years of council secrets streaming across the galaxy. The data transmission reached millions of alien communication devices simultaneously. Council members, military commanders, civilian populations on hundreds of worlds all received the same information at the same moment. They learned that the peaceful Galactic Council was built on lies and genocide. Species that supposedly joined voluntarily had actually been conquered and forced into compliance. Entire civilizations that refused to submit had been exterminated and erased from history. War Leader Thorn was reviewing the firing sequence when the broadcast reached his flagship. He opened the transmission and read the first few files. His clawed hand froze over the firing control. The Scourge weapon sat ready to fire, but Thorn hesitated. The data repository contents were spreading across every council communication network. Billions of beings were learning the truth about their government at this exact moment. If Thorn fired the Scourge weapon now, with the entire galaxy watching and knowing the Council's dark history, it would trigger immediate collapse. Species already angry about the revelations would view the genocide of New Haven as confirmation that the Council remained an. The weeks following the data repository broadcast saw the Galactic Council's authority collapse faster than anyone thought possible. 19 species had declared independence within the first day. By the end of the first month, that number had grown to 37. Riots consumed dozens of worlds as civilian populations learned their governments had been complicit in millennia of oppression. The structure that had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years was disintegrating. High Arbiter Zeln attempted to maintain control through increasingly desperate measures. He ordered military crackdowns on rebellious worlds, but found that many Council fleet commanders refused to fire on civilian populations. The truth revealed by Earth's broadcast had shaken the loyalty of soldiers who believed they served a righteous cause. Zeln's own government officials began resigning in protest. Within 6 weeks of the broadcast, the Council's central authority existed in name only. War Leader Thorn withdrew his fleet to Korath space and refused all communication from Zeln. The legendary commander understood that continuing military operations would only accelerate the Council's collapse. The Korath Empire, its reputation destroyed by revelations of countless atrocities, retreated into isolation. Other aggressive species followed suit, abandoning their council commitments to focus on protecting their own territories. Ambassador Vree seized the moment to organize a coalition of reform-minded species. The Nethian diplomat had spent his career working within the council's corrupt system. Now he had a chance to build something better. Vree reached out to President Helen Carter with a proposal for a meeting to discuss the galaxy's future. The human leader agreed, understanding that Earth had become a pivotal voice in galactic politics through their violent resistance. President Carter traveled to Guardian Station for the historic meeting. Ambassador Vri arrived with representatives from 15 different species, all seeking to establish a new form of interstellar cooperation. The aliens approached nervously, unsure how humans would treat former enemies. Helen greeted them with courtesy, but also with the cold reality that Earth would never again accept subjugation. The negotiations lasted for 3 weeks. Ambassador Vri proposed forming a new interstellar organization based on voluntary membership and mutual respect. Species would retain complete sovereignty over their own territories. No central authority would demand tribute or resources. Military forces would exist only for collective defense, never for conquest or enforcement of political will. Many of the alien representatives were skeptical. They asked why Earth, having demonstrated the ability to destroy the old order, would not simply establish itself as the new dominant power. President Carter's answer was simple and direct. Humans had spent thousands of years building and destroying empires on their own world. History taught that all empires eventually collapsed, and the cost of maintaining them was never worth the temporary power they provided. General Paul Bennett attended the negotiations and provided the military perspective. He explained that humans fought viciously when attacked but had no interest in ruling other species. Earth's brutal tactics during the war were defensive measures, not expressions of imperial ambition. Humanity wanted to be left alone to develop their civilization without interference. They would defend that right with absolute ruthlessness, but had no desire to impose their will on others. Admiral Lisa Grant added that Earth would maintain strong defenses and continue developing military capabilities. The galaxy had proven dangerous, and humans would never again be caught unprepared, but those weapons existed to deter aggression, not to facilitate conquest. Any species that respected Earth's sovereignty would find humans to be cooperative partners. In trade and cultural exchange, Dr. Kevin Hayes presented detailed proposals for technology sharing and scientific cooperation. The Council had hoarded advanced knowledge to maintain its power advantage. The new organization would encourage open exchange of information between member species. Humanity would contribute their expertise in fields like cyber warfare, kinetic weapons, and asymmetric tactics. In return, Earth would gain access to alien advances in fields like energy generation and medical technology. Ambassador Vri found the human proposals both refreshing and slightly disturbing. Earth's leaders spoke of cooperation and mutual respect, while simultaneously making clear they would destroy anyone who threatened them. The contrast between diplomatic courtesy and casual references to devastating violence was jarring. But Vri understood this was the reality of dealing with a species that had fought its way to galactic relevance through sheer ferocity. The negotiations produced a charter for the Federation of Free Worlds. Membership would be completely voluntary with no coercion. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their territory and internal affairs. Members would contribute to collective defense based on their capabilities and would receive protection in return. Decisions would be made through consensus rather than top-down authority. Most importantly, the Federation would have no power to demand resources or dictate policy to member species. 34 species signed the charter within the first month. Others waited to see if this new organization would actually function as promised or simply become another form of empire. The Korath and their remaining allies refused to participate, viewing the Federation as weakness disguised as cooperation. A cold peace settled between the Federation and the holdout species, with both sides maintaining defensive postures but avoiding open conflict. Commander Jake Morrison received an unexpected appointment as Earth's first ambassador to the Federation. President Carter chose him because his experience with First Contact gave him unique insights into alien psychology. Jake had seen the Council at its most arrogant and watched that arrogance crumble. He understood both the necessity of human strength and the importance of building genuine partnerships with species who proved trustworthy. Captain Ryan Foster returned to Earth as a decorated hero, but found peacetime difficult. His squadron had lost 9 ships and 63 crew members during the war. Ryan struggled with guilt over the deaths he had caused and witnessed. Eventually, he found purpose training the next generation of stealth ship commanders. His experiences would ensure that Earth's military remained capable of defending humanity against any future threats. Amy Shen became famous across both human and alien civilizations as the programmer who broke the Council's Information monopoly. Multiple species offered her prestigious positions, but Amy chose to stay on Earth and continue developing cyber warfare capabilities. She understood that the galaxy remained dangerous, and that information security would be crucial to human survival. Her work would protect Earth's networks from the sophisticated attacks that would inevitably come. Lieutenant Sophie Blake survived the war, but lost her taste for military service. She resigned her commission and dedicated herself to helping war refugees from both human and alien populations. Sophie had fought for revenge after losing her family. Now she worked to ensure that future generations would not experience the same losses. Her refugee assistance programs helped thousands of displaced beings find new homes and rebuild their lives. The first anniversary of the war's end arrived with ceremonies across Earth and its colonies. President Carter delivered a speech at a memorial honoring the fallen, including Lieutenant Danny Cole and the team that had sacrificed themselves on Korath Prime. She spoke of their courage and the terrible price of freedom. Humanity had survived extinction but paid for that survival with blood and lives that could never be replaced. Commander Jake Morrison attended the Federation's first annual assembly and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. He acknowledged that humanity's methods during the war had been brutal by the standards of civilized species. Humans had used cyber attacks, nuclear weapons, biological warfare threats, and targeted assassination. These tactics violated every rule of honorable combat that the Council had maintained for millennia. But Jake argued that survival mattered more than honor when facing an enemy, determined to destroy or enslave your entire species. Humans had done what was necessary using every advantage available. The Council had vastly superior technology and numbers. Earth had only its willingness to fight with absolute ruthlessness. That ruthlessness had saved humanity from extinction. Now, Jake continued, Earth offered the galaxy something different. Humans would walk softly and carry a very large stick. They had demonstrated the stick's power during the war. Every species in the Federation knew that attacking Earth meant facing tactics and weapons that ignored traditional rules of warfare. That knowledge would deter aggression and maintain peace more effectively than any Council fleet ever had. But humans also extended a genuine hand of friendship to those species willing to meet them as equals. Earth wanted trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense. The galaxy no longer needed to choose between subjugation and isolation. The Federation offered a third path based on consent and respect for sovereignty. Ambassador Vree listened to Jake's speech and reflected on how much had changed in 1 year. The Galactic Council that had seemed eternal was now a footnote in history. In its place stood a fragile alliance of equals held together by mutual interest rather than force.